Hello and welcome back to Unicast-Administrators. Today we are going to discuss about the groups and the management of groups for existing users. And we are also going to have a look at how to grant root permissions using a default Linux group. And the root permissions are administrative permissions that will allow users to run administrative commands. The local files where the group definitions and properties are stored are in etc group, which is this one. But in this file, we see the secondary groups to which a user is added, whilst the primary groups for a specific user appear inside etc passwd. So we need to make sure that we remember this distinction. Inside etc group, we only see the secondary group to which a user is assigned, and inside etc passwd we also see the user itself with his password encrypted, but at the same time we can see his primary group inside this particular file. An example inside etc group would be an entry similar to this. So for example, if I want to grab for the wheel security group or group, which at the same time, if a user is added inside this particular group, they will get root permissions or administrative permissions. So this is an example of how this looks. So inside etc group we see the secondary group to which the user Johnny is added, and because we also searched for Johnny, we also see Johnny separated. And here the name of the wheel group shows first, then here we have :X, which stands for the group password. It's not used anymore, but this is what this field represents. 10, it's the GID, the group identifier, and then we can see which users are added inside the group wheel, and in our case it's Johnny. So for example, we can also see that using lead -g, and we type the name of the group, and we can see that inside the group wheel Johnny is a member. Or we can do ID Johnny, and this will show us in which groups Johnny is added. And we can see that the primary group for Johnny, it's Johnny, and the secondary group, it's wheel with the ID 10. And you would remember from our last episode that every user that you create automatically has a primary group with his or hers name as well. And if we do a cat on etc passwd and we pipe for Johnny, you will see that that particular group appears here as well. And both the user and the group have the ID 10, the ID 1000, whilst the wheel group has the ID 10. The GID stands for group identifier. At the moment, inside the group wheel, we have only one member, which is Johnny. But if we would like to change that, this is how we can work with adding members to existing groups. So let me clear my screen, and here we can use the command group mod, which will modify the group, and we add a minus here or a hyphen, and we add a lowercase a for append and an uppercase u for user. So we could add the user Andrew to the group wheel, but we have an error stating that this is not a valid member. So let's create the user Andrew, and let's run again the same command. So again, group mod allows you to modify existing groups, and with the arguments minus lowercase a for append and uppercase u for user, then you add the name of the user and the group to which you want to include that particular user. We hit enter, and now if we like to do a lead -g to check which users are members of a particular group, and lead stands for list IDs and -g stands for group, and we can give the group wheel. And now we will see that Johnny and Andrew both are member of this particular group. And remember that every user included in the wheel group will automatically receive root permission. Also, it's very important to remember that you have to use -A for append, because otherwise it will completely wipe your existing groups of members or members in the group. For example, if I want to create another user, and let's say that we call this Jake, and if we run the command group mod -u for user, and we want to add Jake to the group wheel, and if we do now a lead -g on the group wheel, you will see that only Jake appears now. Why? Because when we use the group mod command, we did not use the argument -a, and this has completely overwritten the existing list of users in that particular group. So in order to make sure that you don't remove existing users, always use the -a to add the other users as well. So I am going to repeat the same command that we did above, and I will add Andrew, and let's see if we can add Johnny as well, and we cannot, so we have to add the users individually. So we add Andrew again, and then Johnny as well. And now if I clear my screen and I do again a lead -g on wheel, you will see that all three, Jake, Andrew and Johnny, are all members of the wheel group. And if you want to check that again, let's say by manually querying the etc group file, you can do that. Let's say let's use tail, and let's see which are the latest entries or the last entries inside etc group, and you will see that we have Johnny, Andrew and Jake. And Aloy, I'm not too sure what this is. I think it's something default, and it's not a user that I created. I think it's one of the users that get created automatically for a specific service. But this is how you can use etc group to view the existing list of users inside that particular group. But group mod, it's not the only command that you can use to manage existing users for a particular group. So for now we used group mod -a for append and u for users, but there is also another command which is user mod, which is used to manage user accounts. So if I would like to use user add, and let's say that we want to add a new user, and let's name our new user Kelly. Let me make my shell a bit bigger so you can see this better. So if I use user add and create the user Kelly, and I'll do again lead -g on wheel, we will see that the wheel group has only 3 members. I can also use the command user mod -a in lowercase for append and g for group, but g has to be in capital, in uppercase. So user mode minus the arguments lowercase a for append and uppercase g for groups. We will have to specify the group, in our case wheel, and then the user that we want to use in order to add in that specific group. I hit enter, and now if I do again a lead -g on wheel, you will see that Kelly is also a member of the wheel group. So the only difference between this command and the user mod command, or sorry, the group mod command and the user mod command, are the order on which you specify the objects that you want to apply the action on. So if for user mod you have to specify the group first and the user after that, for a group mod you have to specify the user first and the group after that. Both of the commands do the same thing. It's up to you which one you prefer to use. I got accustomed with both, but at random times I'm using them individually, and it seems that most of the times I'm using group mod, so it's up to you which one you prefer. So this is how you add users to an existing group. One thing that it's important to say is that you should not take advantage of the wheel group unless it's strictly necessary, if it's authorized by your IT department, or if this is really something that you want to do. Now, I used the group wheel because it was easier for me to have that here, but because wheel grants root permissions, maybe you don't want all of your users to have root permissions. So you might need to create separate groups, which we will do later on, but I wanted to reinforce the idea that you should not take advantage of the wheel group unless it's strictly necessary. So, since we already discussed about this, why don't we actually remove the users that we don't want in this particular group? So I can also show you how you can use the command in order to remove the already existing users that are there. So that particular command, it's jpasswd, which stands for group password. I know that it doesn't really make sense, but unfortunately that's how this was built, so that's how I also learned it. Of course, you could always edit the file. So for example, the easiest way would be to do vim on etc group, and from here you would search for your specific user or group, and in this case you could remove it from here, which also would work. So I just removed Kelly. Let me save this, and if I do again elite -G on wheel, you will see that Kelly, it's not a member of this wheel group anymore. You can definitely do that. It's not necessarily such a bad idea, it's just that it's not a best practice. The best practice is to use the Linux method, which is jpasswd, and that stands for group password. And if you use the -d, it will stand for delete. So you have to specify which user you want to remove from which group. So in our case, let's say that I want to remove Jake, and I also want to specify from which group I should remove it. And it's also giving me a prompt to confirm that the user Jake has been removed. And if you want to see more information about specific commands, you can always use the name of the command with --help, and that will give you some information. So here we can see the parameter that I have used, which is -d for remove user. Or if you want even more in-depth information, you can use the command man for manual, and you give it the name of the command that you want. And you have a bit of an explanation here that shows you exactly what this does. You have the options or the parameters that you can use, and so on. And if you don't find the information from this enough, or if you don't think this satisfies your needs, you can always look at these other ones from the C also page. So you can do, let's say, for example, group mod 8, man group mod 8, and this will show you exactly what we have here. And you can also see in which particular page you are. So we are in group mod 8, and we took that from the C also of the man for jpasswd. So these are two methods on how you can remove users from an existing group. And as a matter of fact, let me check again my list of users, and there we go. We also have Andrew. So let's remove Andrew again. So jpasswd -d for delete. We give the name of the user that we want to purge or delete from the member of the group, and we give the group itself. And it told us that it has removed the user from the group wheel. This only removes the user from the group wheel. If we do a cat on etc passwd and we pipe, let's say, for Andrew, you'll see that Andrew and Kelly are still there. They are still members of this. Sorry, not members. We have removed Andrew, Kelly, and Jake as the members of the wheel group, but we also only remove them as members. So we did not remove their accounts completely. So inside Etsy Pass WD, we can still find Andrew and Kelly, which means that their accounts are still existing. They are still present. They are not member of the group wheel anymore. So these users can still log in on your server, but they won't have administrative or root permissions anymore. And of course, users can be members of many secondary groups that serve different purposes. And moving forward, we will look at how we can create our own custom groups using the command group add. So if we do a help on the command group add, we will see that we have different parameters using force, which exits successfully if the group already exists. Basically, it won't get stuck. We can create groups with specific group IDs, or we can display help message as I have done here with argument -h or -- help, and many more. We can even set up a password when we create a group. Now, should you create a password when you create new groups in Linux? Well, it's up to you. It's not a bad thing. I think that's also an enhanced security, but it's not easy for the users that are going to be members of that particular group. So the option is there. It's totally available to you. Now, from my experience, I can tell you that everywhere where I worked, in every infrastructure that I worked, nobody placed passwords on groups. That option is there, but nobody did that because the security, it's the security for your shared folders, for your shared network paths, or just different directories inside your Linux server. Those are granted specifically on security groups or on permission based on groups and assignment to the users, UMask, and so on. So you don't need to focus on this. If you want to, go ahead, do that, but I'm not, in our examples, I am not going to use the password. And group add also allows you to list users of these groups with group add -u, or different parameters are always present. If you want to see more information, again, you can use the command man and you give the command that you want to see examples for, and here you have lots of examples and descriptions. It also shows you, and it also tells you in which files the group account information is set up, the secure group account information, which basically it's the password for the group. JShadow, it's the password. And if you don't set a password, you will only have an X, that similar like we had earlier when we showed our example. And login.devs, well, this is more, we will discuss about Etsy login.devs separately. But basically what you can set up here are different parameters that we also set up, if you remember, in our last episode, for the password, the validity of the password for the user accounts, and so on. This also allows changes for the groups. And again, you have different values here, and you can read more about it directly from the official Linux manual page. But let's proceed with our examples. So we said that we want to create a new group, and let's say that we want to call our group sales for the marketing team. So we just created our group sales, and we also want to add the user, let's say Kelly. So we are going to add Kelly in our group sales. Oh, 1 second. I think I just yeah, my bad. I used user add instead of user mod. So in order to grant access to Kelly in that group, we are going to use user mod -a for append and capital G for group, and we are going to use the group first because we are using the user mod command, and then we specify the user. And now if we do a lead -g on sales, you will see that Kelly it's part of the sales group. And let's use the other command in reverse, which is group mod. And this time we are going to specify the user first, and again use minus lowercase a for append, otherwise you will wipe the existing users from that particular group, and capital U for users. So now we are going to add Jake into the sales group. Lead minus G again on we also have to specify the group. So lead minus G on sales, we have Kelly and Jake here, and we can see that they are present. So there are different options that you can check the users that are present inside this group. Another one, so if you do lead minus G using the group name, it will give you the list of users. Another one would be, for example, to use grep and you pipe for your group. In our case, it will be wheel. Let's add here an escape character and put a pipe, and let's say that we want to search for Kelly, and we are going to do that in Etsy group. That's also another option that you can use. Or the other option is with the ID command, that it will tell you all the groups that Kelly is part of. And again, we will see that Kelly has her primary group that gets created automatically, and it has the ID 1003. Aside from that, we have the sales group as well with the GID 1004. If we do the same for Jake, we will see that Jake has the JID for his primary group 1002, and it also has the JID 1004 for the group sales. You can definitely work with JIDs if you want to identify a specific group to add members or remove members from that, but it's a bit more cumbersome. It's more difficult and you can make mistakes, so you can use only you should use only the names of the groups. So why does Jake has the ID 1002 and why does Kelly has the ID 1003? Well, that's because if you remember from our last episode when we looked inside etsylogins.devs, we saw that normal user accounts, whenever they get created, they start with a user ID and a JID from 1000 onwards. And because we created Jake first, he took the ID 1002 for his user ID and his primary group ID, and Kelly took 1003 for her primary and her primary group as well. Why? Because we have other users that have been created first, and you can see that using tail on Etsy pass WD. And let me remove this here. And if we start with our first user, we will have Johnny, whom we created when we first installed our Linux servers. So Johnny has his user ID, UID 1000 and JID 1000 because he was the first user. Andrew was the second one, so he has 1001. Jake has been the third one, so he has 1002. Kelly was the fourth user and she has 1003 for both her UID, user ID, and group ID, JID. So these are good to know because you might get an infrastructure that has custom security groups that have been specifically created with a specific group ID, and you might get confused.